Hello, everyone. David Bernori here. This is State Politics and Policy, and I believe this is our second online class. I hate this damn virus. Uh, it could be worse. I could be sick, and I hope you and your loved ones are all well. Hopefully, we're going to get through this nightmare soon. Anyway, I miss you all. Uh, this was honestly one of the best classes I've taught in a long time. Really enjoyed you all, seeing you every week. So I'm sad. It's one of those little things that talk about COVID-19. Anyway, link me up or see me on the Twitter. We can stay connected. Some of you are like texting me and emailing me and the like, and I'm enjoying that very much, and I appreciate it. The other thing I want to tell you, just a little public service announcement, non-COVID-19 related. Registration starting soon. If you're not graduating, I would welcome to see you in classes again in the fall, teaching a course in administrative law, super interesting, and federalism, which will be super interesting too, for obvious reasons. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with the show. Oh, one more thing. I'm not sure when you're going to actually watch this. I hope you do watch it. I sent out an email to the class recently, giving a little research option, all related to COVID-19, actually, on some work I'm doing pro bono for some states, and trying to gather some information up and put it together in some fashion. If you're interested in doing it, I need it by Friday, like next Friday, whatever that date is, but soon. So if you're watching this on Thursday, it's probably not going to happen, but no big deal. It is not a prerequisite or a requirement for the course. Okay, so today, according to the syllabus, I'm trying to get myself looking okay here. Not really ever going to happen. I got some sun shining in here. I'm in a sunny room in my house, so I apologize. Today's class is on state budget policy. Woo-hoo. And I'm a tax lawyer by training, state and local tax lawyer by training. And so I tend to look at the budget issues more from the revenue side than on the expenditure side. The other thing I want to mention is that I'm going to assume most of you have taken our budget class here at the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy and Public Administration. We have some excellent professors who teach it. They don't let me teach it anymore. I'll tell you the story behind that, but it's a little embarrassing. In any event, so I'm not going to go through budget process with you in terms of the fundamentals of budget policy and things like that. Most of you have had it and covered it and learned it far better than I could teach it. But here's a little tidbit for you. So when the coronavirus thing ends and we're back at happy hour, you can tell a story. I want to dispel a myth about state budgets. You often hear that states have balanced budget requirements. And this has been a traditional conservative talking point. In fact, they use it to call for a balanced budget amendment on the federal level, and they say, "Wow, if the states can do it, the federal government can do it." And when you think about it theoretically or conceptually, it's like, "Hey, great! You shouldn't spend more than you bring in," and generally that's a conservative approach, and I happen to agree with it. But this idea that states have a balanced budget requirement is kind of a myth. It's kind of a fib. It's true 46 states have constitutional or statutory requirements to balance their budgets. And there's 4 states that don't: Arizona, Vermont, Virginia, and Indiana. Basically, have traditionally balanced their budgets. I mean, it's kind of a unwritten rule that they balance their budget, and they have restrictions on debt anyway. But in all of these states, we're talking about operating budgets. They do not include capital budgets. So states can borrow for bridges and roads and buildings and schools and things like that legally. And they do. But where they really, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But what states do, which I think is awful, and almost every state does this, some more than most, is they do not fully fund their pension plans for state employees, and that's awful. And the way that works is, if you're gonna have from a budget perspective, if you're gonna have a pension plan, what you should do is there is a way to fund it on an ongoing basis. So if we think you're going to retire in 20 years, and we think we want to pay you 50% of your salary in 20 years when you retire, we put money away now in anticipation of that. What a bunch of states doing, and Illinois was always the worst offender of this, but what states started doing is saying, hey, we're a little short on money, so maybe we won't put the money in this year, or we won't put as much money in this year. Well, the minute you do that, especially you mathematicians in the class will get this immediately. The minute you do that, you're screwed, right? Because you're always going to be behind the curve, so states are in the hole on their pension obligations. And then what they did to fix it is they said, oh, well, we'll put some extra money in next year, and we think that money's going to get like a 20% return on investment. So there's a lot of BS that goes on, and it's something you should, if you're interested in, worth following. The real debt, capital expenditures for capital expenditures is about 1.3 trillion nationwide for the states. The unfunded pensions are another $1 trillion. So total debt's probably 2.3, maybe a little bit more, $2.4 trillion. So much for the unfunded. So much for the balanced budget requirements. Okay, so I want to introduce you to a little bit about state and local, not local, but state revenue raising capabilities, and where the states raise their money from and what some of those policy issues are. Some of you know this, some of you don't know this, some of you don't care, and that's okay. But revenue raising has never been more important than it is right now, right? Because what's going to happen, if you're in the public policy field, or you're working for governments, what's going to happen right now is states are facing tremendous budget deficits because of the economic crisis. And what's going to happen is they're going to need to raise revenue. And so what we're going to talk about today is some of the ways they raise revenue, and what some of the pros and cons are of those. So there's only a handful of ways you can do this. And I'm trying to find my real good notes here. So one way to do it is to raise revenue for the states is through the income tax, personal income tax. Personal income tax, that's what you pay. And 41 states have broad-based personal income taxes. 41 states. And the states that don't are Texas, Florida, Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota, New Hampshire, and Tennessee. And what you should know, New Hampshire and Tennessee actually have some limited taxes on income, on like interest and dividends, but not broad-based on wages. So how much money do states raise from personal income taxes? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. You can find this on the census site, by the way. And the total for personal income tax in 2017 was $351 billion. So a lot, right? And I want you to think about that for a second, because some of the largest states in the union, Texas, Florida, do not tax income. And it still raises $350 billion. Now, total state taxation in the United States, total state taxation is about $1.3 billion. So $350 billion is a big chunk of it. So let's stop here for a minute and say, hey, good or bad? Well, I will tell you, there is something good about the personal income tax. It is perceived to be fair. You can adjust it to tax wealthier people more than poorer people. That's generally a good thing. It raises lots of money in good times because it is very elastic, right? So when the economy is good, as it has been for the last couple of years, raises lots of money. The problem is when the economy is bad, as it is right now, the personal income tax declines faster than any other tax. But they're all mildly, in the states that impose it, the property tax is all mildly progressive. It's generally a good thing. And, yeah. So, the other good thing is it's tied, the definition of income is tied to the federal definition of income. So complying with the tax is pretty easy, and it's pretty easy for the states, right? So this is actually both from an administrative and an efficiency standpoint, state income tax, personal income tax, very good tax. The problem with the state personal income tax, and this is a serious problem, is there is a widespread perception amongst political leaders of both parties that the personal income tax deters economic growth. That's just, a lot of people believe that. The scholarly research is mixed on this. But I'll give you two anecdotes that will show you that why that perception becomes reality. One, the fastest growing states in the last couple of years, in the last 25 years, have been Texas and Florida. And you might say, oh, well, it's the weather. And that's true. But it's also the fact that they don't have any personal income taxes. So that's something to think about. Nevada's been growing fast. Tennessee actually is the fastest growing state right now. No income tax, no broad-based income tax. So these are all things you should think about. Funny, another anecdote, maybe for a Zoom happy hour, is I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, but who cares? 98% of the professional athletes in the four major sports, football, baseball, basketball, and hockey, they have their permanent residence in Florida. Sure, the weather's nice. The taxes are nicer. I don't know. Coincidence? Perhaps. Anyway, that's the personal income tax. So, in general, it's a good tax. Sure, I don't think. I mean, I think it's a good tax. There's a limit. There's one big limit, though. You should know is you can't go too crazy, right? So DC can't have a really high personal income tax compared to Maryland and Virginia, and in fact, it doesn't. It's a little bit higher, but it's not much higher because people will move, and they do, and that's a big problem because people who can will move if the taxes are too high. Okay. The next tax I want to talk about in terms of how states raise revenue is the corporate income tax. Now, you guys will not know this because you did not, some of you did not, most of you did not take my state and local public finance class, but I hope you do. If you didn't graduate, come back next spring. Corporate income tax, I hate it. Hate it. It is a horrible, dumb, at the state level, dumb tax. And I could go into this for hours. In fact, I've written papers and books and all kinds of nonsense on it. The state corporate income tax, terrible tax, because it doesn't work. It's not. I'm not channeling Ayn Rand here or something. It's a terrible tax because it doesn't work. It raises like 1.5% of total state revenue. Nothing, right, in the big scheme of things. And what's the total number? The total number last year was 44. In 2017, it raised $44 billion, which is nothing, right? The state budgets were almost $2 trillion. It raised $44 billion, nothing. It doesn't raise a lot of money. It never will raise a lot of money. 40, how many states have it? Let me pull that up. I'll tell you how many exactly states have it. 44 states have it. Yeah, what am I thinking about here? I hate this tax. It raises no money. It never will raise any money. We spend an inordinate amount of time auditing it, planning around it, messing around with it.